We have Saurabh Srivastav right next to him. He's not only the co-founder of Indian Angel Network, but also mentor to many of us and an architect of the Iron Fund. He's a co-founder of NASCOM, brought in entrepreneur organizations and literally started them off and grew them like TIE and IVCA, serial entrepreneur and a successful VC and angel. So we seem to have a full gamut between. We have Mr. Ajay Chaudhary, right, of course, an angel investor, part of IN board and on the IN fund IC. And Prem Parthasathi, partner from the India UK Venture Capital Fund, who joins us with a perspective from the other side of the seas. So as you can see, I have very little to do now because we have the stalwarts who are going to take the show. But to get it going, let me just start off with a couple of questions, if I may, and feel free to stop me because that's the easiest. Um, there is actually a philosophical point going around globally where some believe that companies are raising too much capital. Over the last 6 to 9 months, a little bit of frothness is coming back to the Indian ecosystem. What, to your minds, is the stage of the investment cycle in India right now? And just to get it going, Raman, would you like to?
No, I think what you speak about the frothiness is valid. Money is available as an entrepreneur. If somebody comes and says at a higher valuation where you dilute lesser, I'll give you more money. I mean, as I keep saying, I'm not as stupid as I look. I'll take the money. So, but the fundamental point is what those investors who bring in that money want the company to do. And I think it is not just the fact that there is too much money, it is the aspect that they try to run the companies that is more worrying than than just the availability of money. Availability of money is good if it helps the founders and the entrepreneurs meet their objective. But where they get derailed from their objectives, that is what becomes very challenging.
So if I may add, can everyone hear me as well?
Yeah.
So every time Raman speaks, you have to tune down your headset.
I hate you, Saurabh.
So every time I speak, you just tune it back up. So what Raman is saying is true. I think the danger becomes when entrepreneurs confuse an equity infusion with revenues. So you look at a lot of entrepreneurs and they're talking only about how much money they got at what valuation. It's irrelevant. At the end of the day, data shows you that companies in the US have died even after getting 10 to 15 billion dollars of capital infusion. So at the end of the day, if you are not offering a product or service that somebody wants and that somebody is willing to pay a price at which you can make money, you don't actually have a business. It doesn't matter how much money you pull in. So maybe it's because I come from the old school of IT services. So you sort of learn that whatever you do, this fundamental rule, which I say gravity, must obtain. You should have something that somebody is willing to pay for, and you should be able to make money. Now, once what they call unit economics is established, that's fine. You could be making losses because you're scaling or whatever it is. But taking more money than you know what to do with is close to harakiri.
Yeah, I'd just like to add to that. I actually was mentoring a company, and through the angel round, they were doing fine. And then the VCs came in, they got a whole bunch of money. And these guys started to look dramatically towards growth. And when that started to happen, they got derailed totally. And today, the business is closed down. So actually, they are not able to handle the money that's coming in. So I think the most important thing at that stage is to stick to your basics and ensure that you're looking at your growth, but with some profit, definitely.
So what you're saying, I just want to add a point, is apart from money, I think the quality of money becomes very important. You know, as you grow companies, mentoring the entrepreneurs to really scale up and build in the foundations for a large company, all the risk mitigation strategies and delivery and building teams and all. I think that is what you're referring to, that becomes very important with the money.
Actually, Padmanja, you use the term mentoring, and that is, in my opinion, one of the most misunderstood terms. When you sit on the board or you're an investor and you give input or guidance to the entrepreneur, he's not your employee and you're not the boss that says do this. A lot of the so called mentors, a lot of the people who sit on the board who represent the funds that have come in, think they are sitting there to give direction. That is where it is an employer employee relationship. A mentoring relationship, and Ajay just gave the example. I think I know the company is talking of. I'm an investor and I lost some money there.
I made money.
Yeah, I made a little bit of money also. I sold half my stake, but that's a separate story. But it is that understanding of mentoring that is an issue, and giving input to an entrepreneur where the entrepreneur says, I'll come back and bounce some things off you, and he may come back and say, instead of what you're saying, I'll do this. That is fine. Give him the space. That is what is important.
I would just add to what you're saying, Raman. Very true. So when I'm looking at investing, and I've been involved maybe in 100 investments, but the single most important thing is who am I investing in? So if you're an entrepreneur, remember that whoever's investing in you, if they are smart investors, are really looking at you much more than they're looking at the business plan. If I look at 10 points, 6 of those have just to do with who am I investing in. Because we are investors, we're not looking to run your company. When we wanted to run companies, then we were doing our own startups. But right now we don't. And if I don't get the sense that you have what it takes, then I would not invest. Doesn't matter how seductive your space or the business plan is. Similarly, I think you should look at the investor and say, is this somebody who vicariously wants to run his own company through me? Is this somebody that I feel comfortable asking for advice or inputs? I think it's very important that there's rigor involved in both selection of an entrepreneur in whom you invest, and for entrepreneurs selecting who they want an investment from. So valuation, and some of that is important, but I would tell you that is actually a very low order of priority in your mind. It should not be the number one priority in your mind.
So Prem, you're sitting on the other side of the ocean, right? So
That's
how
right.
do you see the early stage investment scenario in India? I mean, that'll be an interesting perspective for us. We are seeing it from the inside. You'll be seeing it from the outside, right?
I think that I just agree with what the gentlemen around the table have got to say, but philosophically it's exactly the same. But if you really think about the Indian ecosystem in terms of startups that we have been operating in between the UK-India corridor, what we are beginning to see is the richness of the technology and the IP that is coming out of the Indian ecosystem is going by leaps and bounds. And also on top of that, the technology or the IP that is coming out, we are seeing far more use cases where entrepreneurs are addressing global problems. So that's something that is evolving and we are beginning to see a lot more of. Hence, we are more interested in looking at the Indian ecosystem and seeing how these companies can have a global presence, not just from India, but also in terms of UK and beyond.
Yeah, so that takes me actually to the next point, which is, Walmart came in with a lot of foreign money coming into India, and and especially in the startup ecosystem in some ways, in companies which have really started first generation and scaled up. Do you think there is a serious risk of local VCs getting disrupted by foreign capital? Is local money, Series A and beyond, challenged? And is there competition there?
So if I may just make a point, of course, Flipkart got very lucky with Walmart. They would have.
And whether Walmart got lucky with Flipkart, we will know soon.
But just to pick up the point that you're making, you know, at that level, the investments going into Flipkart or Ola or Oyo, there's only half a dozen players who are playing that game. There's not like 100 VCs. You can count them on your fingers. And those players are disrupting not just the Indian VC industry, but also the US VC industry. So the US private equity guys are complaining that 10 cent, many of these guys turn up, don't care about valuations, are willing to write big checks. The next fund of Masayoshi Son is what, 10, 100 billion, you know, so it's an issue, but obviously they have a game they're playing well. So it's quite different from what we're playing. So my sense is domestic capital almost did not exist 10 years ago. There's a reasonable amount now. We don't have a lot of players who are doing the 100, 200 million, 500 million rounds. But there will never be that many players that soon. I mean, if you talk to Rajan Anandan, he tells you that it's easier to get funded if you're a startup in India today than almost any other country in the world. So there is that capital available. And again, just going back to the earlier question, I think entrepreneurs are getting lost in this valuation and how much money there is. InfoEdge, or better known as Naukri.com, has got $2 or $3 billion market cap. It's an internet company. It makes 20% profit before tax. It only raised 10 million in its whole lifetime. That's all the money it raised. So I think the most successful companies in the long term, you will find have not raised huge amounts of money. So my advice again to entrepreneurs would be, don't get seduced by this new scenario. Just focus on your business. Is it something that can sustain? You can't keep raising money and say 10 years later I'll figure out how I'll make money. You might be lucky, like Sabir Bhatia. You didn't have a business model, somebody came and bought you out. But then Sabir Bhatia hasn't created another successful company since. So worry about what you're doing. The money will come if you're doing the right thing. And that's why I was asking one entrepreneur this question yesterday when he told me all these 5 companies he built, sold. So I said, are you building them to sell or are you building them to scale? If you build them to scale, the money will come. You don't have to worry about it. If you build them to sell, you may or you may not. It just depends.
So the best way of funding your company is through revenues, actually. Because if you build that, then the additional VC money or investor money will come in. Yeah, Prem.
I think you need to take a perspective about revenues or profitability now. If I were to kind of give you a comparison between the US, which I think India is trying to kind of get to, the kind of frothiness we spoke about earlier. In US, a company is valued based on scale. And put tangible numbers, you're talking about 4 to 6 times the multiples of revenue. If you go to the UK, where I come from, you're talking about 18 times revenue multiples. So that's the kind of shift that is happening. But I agree, it all boils down to what you as a company are trying to do, what sort of money you really want in terms of your requirement for the next 12 or possibly 15 to 18 months to be able to kind of get to that scale. And then, most importantly, focusing on your unit economics.
So I guess we are not going to be like China where there's a lot of domestic money available. And therefore, there's a lot of support for a whole bunch of startups, even at level C, D, E, etc., etc. So I think in India, we will have to have a situation where global money will come in, and I think we should welcome it.
Okay. So there is a shift that is happening in India in the startup ecosystem and the venture investing. What we are always hearing is every VC capital fund is looking for companies with IP, with deep technology applications, strong product. Is this going to be the new wave in India's startup story?
I think we hear of that today. These are surrogates that the VCs find easy to use to talk of predictable revenues, which is exactly the point that Saurabh made earlier, and the point that you made to say revenue is the best way to be able to fund. It is a surrogate to say that if you have IP, if you are the only one and nobody else has it, if you are seriously disrupting a marketplace, it will create an opportunity for you to get revenue. Ultimately, the surrogates, in my opinion, will undergo a change. But the backbone to say that are you serving the needs of a customer, and is somebody willing to pay for what you are doing, and do the unit economics works? That is the backbone of any and every business. The fact that you have IP gives you a leg up to get there faster. The fact that it uses some newer technology. We can talk of good things like blockchain and AI and machine learning. Those are all aspects that speed up the timeline, but ultimately it is whether you're creating something for a customer.
And also, Raman, whether you execute well. I mean, to give you an example, we were just talking before the session that a lot of things were developed by Xerox at a place called Xerox Park, the Palo Alto Research Center. In 1980, an ex-roommate of mine from Harvard had joined them, and he said, why don't, and I was in California, he said, come, let me show you something. And he had a product called Small Talk in 1980. So obviously it had been going around from before 1980, in the 70s. It did everything that Steve Jobs did in Apple. Microsoft Windows came maybe a decade later. They all made money. Xerox PARC made no money. They had the technology. So it is not enough that you have IP. You better be sure what you're going to do with that IP.
Great example.
What business model are you going to create? How will you execute? So, I mean, I would say, I would echo what Raman is saying. TCS has a market cap of $100 billion. That's like 60-70% of the Tata Gross market cap. What IP do they have? So, yes, IP is very important. You need a differentiator and you need execution. And if you have that, you will always be successful. And yes, if you have intellectual property that's protected and nobody can copy, it gives you a little more time. You can make some errors because people will take time to catch up with you, but there's no guarantee that you will succeed.
I guess that technology is so sexy that it carries people along, and people get so attracted to say, okay,
Coming from Ajay.
people get so attracted that, blockchain is it, and therefore if it's blockchain, I'm going to invest. A whole bunch of these things are happening today. I think we need to just sit back and say, isn't technology ubiquitous? Isn't it part of every business? Just tell me one business that runs without technology. I mean, look at Oyo. It's a hotel business, right? Right? And they employ 1,200 software people. So this is what it's all about. Technology is going to be the basis of every business that you see around you. And I think what we need to see is the implementation and the execution and how technology is used to make the business bigger and better. And I think that's really what it's all about, rather than getting carried away with, buzzwords like what they are around today.
Absolutely. I mean, I completely agree with that. So we at Potak, we look at either IP or business innovation. So if I were to kind of bring this to life, one of the companies we invested is a company called Goodbox. Now, Goodbox is nothing but a UK-based company for digital payments in the charity sector. So today we go out of a tube station or a train station, people are standing with buckets. It's cash. But why can't it be cashless? That's the fundamental question the founders ask themselves. And now they've come up with a fantastic product, and there are about 1,000 such charities globally wanting to kind of work with them. And we're not able to supply. That's the kind of problem we have right now. That's a different problem. But having said that, what Goodbox in this space found out, but they didn't have an IP. It's a proper fintech platform, touch and go or tap and pay. But they found out this market niche and addressing the demand of the market right at the time with the proper execution capabilities.
So I'll give you another example. For instance, in the first fund we ever did, Infinity, in 2020 years ago, we had funded a company that had all the IP you would like. They were way ahead in the Bluetooth space. They had a full stack. They were ahead of anything that was happening in the US. We thought this would be a marquee company. This will give us the whole fund back. We put the maximum investment in that company. We got zero. We funded another company that was going to be the Charles Schwab of India. It was called India Bulls. They tried something, it didn't work. They switched their model. We own 21% of India Bulls. All of you know what it's worth today. Our vendors started life as a company called Cool Startups. They wanted to be Guy Kawasaki. It was very sexy in those days. We got caught up too, as you said. We got seduced. We said, yeah, this is great, Guy Kawasaki. They were down to the last $10,000. And when we sat down, and that is where the quality of entrepreneurs matters, they agreed that they were wrong. We agreed we were wrong. And we said, okay, what do we do? So we said, let's move it to a more brick and mortar come internet model. We said, you need to change your name, become an investment bank, but in the tech space. But you can't do it with a name like Cool Startups. So we said, look, let's look around. What are the good names? Accenture. So we said, okay, a vendor sounds like a good name. They became a vendor. They're the #1 technology investment bank in India. All of these are people who don't actually have any IP they can protect. But to my mind, there are two things. Either you need to be doing something very different, or you need to be doing something very differently. If you got one or either of those two, you should be okay. If you have both, that's fantastic. But execution is key. All these stories taught me that who's most important? The entrepreneur. Are they willing to learn from the market? Are they willing to adjust? Are they willing to listen to advice? It's still their company. And the second thing that's very important is how well you execute. That's all it is. You look at the vendors, look at India Bulls, pure execution. Anybody could have done what they have done.
So there's a great learning there, and I think what 2 points I take away is good companies which build up, forget the investors for a minute, is innovative businesses, not just innovation. And as Saurabh let out a secret on our vendors, and I'm sure Gaurav and Ranu and Kaushal are not going to be happy how their name was derived. But the fact of the matter is, it's not only IP or product innovation, but business innovation, brand innovation, commercial innovation. And I just want to take a step, just take a
So
little bit.
Padmaja, to be complete, I want to tell you that both people sitting on my left and right have done exactly that. You know, he founded HCL, there was no IP. Look at what HCL is today. He invented BPO, there was no IP. But that's what he did, just execution. So
If I got 0.1% of the revenues of this industry, I'd be okay.
Well, you are okay.
I'd buy you drinks after this.
You are okay. But what I did want to showcase today is just one piece that, how I just can't help myself but say, how Ian looks at it. And I don't want to say anything except perhaps point out and ask Puneet from Clenstar to just come for a minute and just present, a very innovative business with what I would call a great entrepreneur. So it is an innovative business. This is Clenstar, one of the iron companies. So that's what we look for.
So I was listening carefully.
Half a second. Otherwise, I'm getting signals from there.
So we make people bathe without water. So, but there is a IP around it. There is a business model. There is a market need. So we realize people traveling, patients, defense, they don't have options. So ideally, we started for that, and we are scaling as a waterless technology in various verticals now. So starting from personal hygiene, dental hygiene without water, maybe you will not have to wash clothes. So likewise,
Okay.
Yeah.
So the only request I have as audience, you've got to go and buy his product. He's not going to give it complimentary. So, as IAN, one of the things we did, right, is we created what we brought to the country, I should say, the angel investing ecosystem, and we have two of the co-founders sitting here. And that sort of opened up a plethora of opportunities for entrepreneurs to sort of garner money, and very high quality money. And as we went through the 10 years, we saw a gap in the market, which was angel funded companies being able to raise their next round, where we brought in the Iron Fund. But the question to the panelists is a little different, to say we saw that gap between the angel and the fund. But do you think the family offices, which are now breeding in the country, are giving us a run for our money? Or how do you look at them?
So let me first say Clenstat's a good example. He's doing something different, and he's also doing something differently. When you got both of those right, then you're in the zone. So unless he executes very poorly, he should actually do very well.
That's a challenge for you.
Yeah. So, but coming to family offices, I think family offices are just beginning to get into their stride right now. And I think it's very welcome, because it's another source of domestic capital, which didn't exist in India, which exists now. My only advice to family offices would be, don't get seduced, as Ajay said, by tech. It's easy because they don't have experience of investing in winning and losing. So initially I'd suggest they should partner with people who know, become comfortable with the kind of risks that they're taking, get comfortable with what they think are their own strengths and weaknesses, and then be bold enough to move out on their own. Otherwise, the danger is that they'll come out, take bets, lose money, and then retreat back into their shells, and that would not be good for the startup ecosystem.
Yeah, domestic money. Padmaja, you referred to that in your earlier question, and Saurabh referred to that. There is a mammoth market that is sitting there. And yes, investing can bring in disproportionate returns if you are able to back the right kind of company. So the opportunity is huge. There is still a lot of learning to be done of what works in the Indian ecosystem, how the entrepreneurs will behave, how we'll tackle a good regulation in the country. There's a lot that the family offices have to learn, that the entrepreneurs have to learn. But the opportunity is mammoth. I would not burst into tears that, another channel is opening up that will invest. I think in the world of collaboration tomorrow, whether it is the funds or whether it is the family offices, whether it is individual high net worth individuals, they will all coexist to what will come out of it tomorrow. Pension funds, provident fund money, insurance companies. There is a lot of distance we have to cover. There's a lot of learning that still has to happen.
Actually, I've been noticing there are two types of family offices. One who are looking at it exceedingly professionally, and they have actually employed professionals who know how to manage money and know how to invest into the right organizations. So that's the one that are doing it very, very professionally. And the other ones are the ones where they have the money, but they are looking at investing and they are taking punts. I think that's really where they need to start to work, either with funds or co-invest with some others, so that they are able to get the benefit of knowledge of investing. I think that's really where the whole situation is going to be for those kind of family offices. So, and I've noticed some of them even have put out 20 crore, 30 crore type of punts. And I think that's not the right thing to do at this stage.
No, it's actually, Ajay, if I may add to that, they are taking those punts, then they are getting board seats, and then they are giving inputs which I think to be very charitable to them is questionable.
They're trying to run those companies.
Yeah, that's right. And I've come across entrepreneurs who come back and say, I took that money. I left my job. I didn't want to be in a job, but they are treating me as if I'm their employee. That is not what the ecosystem needs. That is going to seriously impact the ecosystem in the long term.
Captain to coach is a very, very difficult. It's a very difficult.
Actually, I had a case here, a particular situation where the family office said that I'd like to put in 30 crores, but I'd also like my son to be on your board. And suddenly what starts to happen is that they seem to own more than the founders. And the founders are really running scared because they know that tomorrow who will control this business. So I think this is really where the danger is of the family office.
So Prem from the UK.
Right, before I begin to say this, Padmanjay mentioned about IAN being 10 years. So I would admit that I've grown up watching IAN and as a role model. Whether I'm doing things different or differently, time will say. Right. So,
thank you. That's a very nice comment to make. Thank you.
So I learned a lot about VC investing, looking at the kind of principles you applied. So having said all of that, in terms of family office or any capital for that matter, it all boils down to what that money can do beyond money, because money is only a commodity. So what we are increasingly finding, as Ajay was talking about, is a portion of the family offices which are more organized, and they only play to their own strengths. Wherein, for example, if a particular family has made wealth from a pharma kind of an industry, they are only looking at identifying those companies at the pharma in the entire pharmaceutical life science, enterprise value chain. So that's something they are doing. But we're also finding other pockets of family offices who are investing money just for a pure diversification perspective. So that is something that, as an entrepreneur, one would need to kind of question, because at the end of the day, between the investor and the investee, when you're having the initial conversation, I would call it speed dating. Eventually, you're getting into a fixed time marriage. So you need to be absolutely sure what each other person is going to add value towards each other.
Yeah. Investors get into a marriage, look for a divorce and a hefty alimony. Yeah, I completely believe that. But having said that, I'm going to, India has always been a very innovative country. In the startup angel investing, early stage investing, we've created some of the most innovative models. And of course, our startups, as Puneet just represented, are very innovative companies. But let me ask a question. Our Indian ecosystem per se is at an inflection point. On the other hand, we have huge foreign monies coming in, as we discussed a little earlier. Which sectors, and I'm combining two questions for whoever's tracking me, but companies, and which sectors will companies grow where we may create the next bat of China, whether it's Baidu's, whether it's Alibaba and Tencent, or US FANG, which is Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, and Google. What do you think? I mean, we have some very, very experienced, not only investors, but people who've really built and driven industries and are now building national strategies. So I think this is really something we'd like to hear from you guys. It'll be a great takeaway for me personally, for sure. Prem, you want to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in terms of the answer to the question, in terms of answer from India to the rest of the world, it's a demand-supply equation. If you kind of go back a few years, we talked about e-commerce, and then because of e-commerce, logistics thrived and so on and so forth. But one of the sectors that we are seeing, or three sectors we are seeing, which I think India will have answers in terms of a global scale, is number one, fintech, which everybody understands. So India is the second largest consumer, 57% of all the fintech next to China and other places. Two is healthcare. 600 million people cannot afford healthcare innovation. Now, when I say healthcare innovation, I'm not talking about purely drugs. I'm talking about the modus operandi or the technology behind creating the drugs, all the way through to health tech, all the way through to med tech, and also even in terms of wearable devices. So those are the kind of areas in terms of affordable innovation. Is something from the healthcare perspective is something that we believe there'll be huge answers to that, and that needs to come from the local understanding and tweaking of the value proposition from outside, if at all technology is coming from the outside. And the third is also India is in a leapfrog moment in terms of how the cities are evolving themselves, be it in transport, be it in energy, be it in water or agri-tech. So these are the areas where there's a huge demand, just like what we saw in telecoms in terms of leapfrog movement. We are looking at leapfrog movements within, and that's where the real answer comes from.
So I think if I would add, one is to mention something everybody forgets. These multi-billion-dollar companies you're talking about, we have already created them. HCL is one of them. Infosys, Wipro, these are all startups that actually have been world beaters. And I would say even TCS, because the only company larger than TCS in market cap in the world is actually IBM in IT services. TCS is more valuable than Accenture. So we have created them. But in the new areas, I completely agree with Prem, because in the areas of healthcare, for example, or in the area of fintech, there is a level of innovation needed to succeed in India, which will be hard globally, because you'll have to do it at a price point that companies in the US or Europe do not have to bother with. So it will have to be done here. And it's beginning to be done here. And once you've cracked that and created those solutions, then the world is your oyster. So look at fintech. I mean, 70 years we had like 13 banks, and suddenly the last 3 or 4 years we've tripled that number with all kinds of different banks. It's taken us 4 years to almost get a few 100 million people into the banking system. Now this kind of innovation the world has not seen. And we now have the platform. So if you look at UID, which is Aadhaar, if you look at UPI, if you look at all these innovations here, we have a difference in the sense that in China, the government directly or indirectly owns all these platforms. In the US, all of these platforms are privately developed. So we have an interesting phase where actually the government has done a lot of the platforms, and now entrepreneurs can come and use them and leverage them, use the APIs and now build solutions. So it's much quicker ramp up on space. So I agree entirely with Prem.
If Supreme Court doesn't step in.
Yeah.
Okay, Raman?
No, to what, this is one time you can say me too and still get away with it, right? I mean, everything that has been said, yes, but the fundamental common thing in this is all solutions that are being spoken about, whether it is fintech, whether it is the Aadhaar base, whether it is health, it is to do with people. And India is one of the largest markets, so is China. And creating a solution that meets the needs of the people at a price point that is acceptable to them, that still gives you a transaction cost that allows you to make money. Anything on that, whether it leverages technology, does not, saves water. I mean, we just heard having a bath without water. I mean, it's a very scary thought. Right? But hey, if he can swing it, it may happen. My kids would love it. So the solutions, the uniqueness of the solution, the cost per transaction, the sheer distribution, how you get to your customer, the serviceability. I think a lot of our companies today forget that they have to service the customer. And I meet a lot of startups, you tell them, okay, so you'll get it to them, or, I've tied up with so and so. The customer has an issue. How will he or she get in touch with you? And they look at you as if you're from planet Mars. It will not happen unless you think through the entire chain of which way it has to happen.
So actually, I'd like to add to that to say that I think what we need to look at is the large size of the domestic market. And this large size of the domestic market is what will create solutions which are required for at the bottom of the pyramid to start with. Now, if you look at what has Geo done in the last few years, it's completely changed the marketplace because of the price point that Raman you were talking about. And suddenly, we are the largest data consuming country in the world. So just 2 years is all it took to change the model. And I think this is really where the disruptions are going to happen when people come and create solutions which are meant for this huge, large domestic market. Now you start to look at the next revolution that's going to happen in mobility, and which is going to be EVs, right? Electric vehicles as they're going to happen. Now these electric vehicles, a lot of innovation is required in the country. A lot of work has to be done around battery technology and whole bunch of other technologies which can change the whole model. We can't be following the global model here. We have to create Indian solutions to Indian problems. And I think that's really where we need to think that EVs can happen in this country. Everybody says, how can EVs happen without charging stations? But if people are not thinking that all that we travel in a day in a city like Delhi is 8 kilometers in your car. You don't need to charge it. You just take it home and charge it. So, those kind of battery technologies and solutions is what will be required for a country like India.
So we innovate for India, in India, and by India.
No, but you innovate for the world, because if it works, the advantage you have in India is that you're not living in Malaysia or Thailand. I mean, those are great countries, don't get me wrong, but they don't have scale. If I do something here, I can scale it to millions, tens of millions, 100 million, and I can get my price point right, I can get my product right. If I get it right, the whole world is my oyster. But we're the only people who can do it, because if I'm sitting in the US as a startup, it's not a problem I need to solve. I have scale and I can charge a lot more, why would I bother? So these innovations, you have all the time in the world.
So we are innovating, just to correct what we are saying, we are innovating in India for the globe, actually. That's important.
Actually, this friend of mine called Dr. Vijay Mahajan, he used to be ISB director earlier. And he's written this great book called The 86% Opportunity. And what does he talk about? He says, all global companies are designing and creating products for 14% of the world's population. 86% of the world's population sits in India, China, and Africa, and these countries. So it's very important that if you create solutions for the 86% of the market, you will be hugely successful.
Just two points. We spoke about electric vehicles. I think it's changing. The guys at Log 9 over there, they have aluminium fuel vehicles. It's a fantastic point.
No, not only that, the companies that I'm talking to are changing the model. You don't have to charge at all. You just go and all you do is have a bank of 8-10 batteries. Every battery takes you 10 kilometers. You put as many in your slots as you wish. You drive to the same petrol station you go now. There's a place where you fill gas, petrol. There's a place where you fill diesel. There's a place you go there, just pick up the batteries that you need and just swap them with your own. So it's not just technology, it's also business models. So innovation on all sides can change this.
Okay, this is a panel which is hard to get in one place, one time. But
And at the right time.
And it's hard to shut them up.
And I'm having to play the devil. Please be empathetic to me. But I still want to give an opportunity. No, please don't. We can take 2 questions before we open it up for pitch. And the questions have to be literally less than 10 words. Otherwise, don't ask the question. Because we will have a more than 10 words answer for sure. Yeah.
Alright, my name...
Yeah, it's
No, just ask the question.
Okay, so we were talking about innovation. I want to ask the panel that what is the importance of defendability of an idea or a business in today? Because the moment you build a business, somebody else is ready with a similar model, probably more money.
What's the moat?
So how do you rate it and how is it important?
I think it boils down to execution and speed of execution with the right foundations in place.
Okay.
So I'll just add to it. I think, just remember that ideas, a dime a dozen. Most people don't know how to execute on it. So I would say the number one thing is execution. That is one of your biggest defendability options. You take TCS, Infosys. Infosys and Mastech started at the same time. See where they are now? Pure execution. But the second thing on defendability is, yes, if you have something that you can build a strong moat around with IP and all the rest, it's helpful only if you execute on it. But if you don't have an idea which has, it's a bit like when you're driving a car. You want the car behind you not to be able to catch up. So if you can, you build a wall. If you don't have the time, you throw a log of wood. If you can't do that, throw lots of pieces of glass, nails, whatever you like. Everything will slow somebody out. You need to figure what space you're in, how much time can you get, and do it.
Actually, there's a very interesting concept which is called temporary monopolies. So actually, when you create a product and you have a monopoly, it'll never last. So you need to keep thinking of creating more and more and more monopolies, and these are called temporary monopolies. So for 8 to 12 months, you may have monopoly in something, but then you start to work earlier on creating the next monopoly. So that's what will keep you ahead.
Okay.
I'm Ajay Mutreja. I work with multiple startups from cross-border. Ajay, I think I like your comment. 86% of the people in this developing world are being ignored for the new technology innovation. Why are we not working on basic problems of drinking water, air pollution, and waste management, which are at least each of them a couple of $1 billion opportunities in India itself?
Okay.
So actually, these kind of things are happening. Don't worry. We have actually, from IIN, also invested in a company called Sahas that works on waste management, and they're really doing well. I also spotted a company that's actually working on external air purification. And these people have created a model which is very interesting based on creating, giving these kind of solutions through CSR. So you can actually have a colony where you can put these external air purifiers, and the whole thing can get funded through CSR. So these kind of innovations are happening. Water also, a lot of work. I've seen a whole bunch of startups work on water.
It's early days.
Okay. So I will have to, I know I'm enthused by the number of hands going up, and I understand and empathize, but I have a devil's devil sitting behind me who's stopping me. So we're going to have 4 quick pitches, 2 minutes to showcase the innovation, and 1 question from the panelists for each showcase. We have Luke Nicholson. Where is Luke? Right. For showcasing carbon culture.
He's not here.
Does this work? Everyone can hear me?
Yeah.
Excellent. Hello everyone, I'm Luke from Carbon Culture. I've got 2 minutes now, so I'm going to go as fast as I can. So I should say, to start with, we're not actually raising investment at the moment. Carbon Culture's pre-revenue business. We've made some revenue, 1.5 million-ish over a few years. But I'm going to tell you a bit about the business. It's quite likely we're going to do some a raise for growth next year. So Carbon Culture. The problem we're addressing is embedding sustainability in large organisations. Worked with a lot of organisations through government and education mostly, and the failures that they have, the challenges that they have embedding sustainability. They can do things from the top down, but they have a lot of trouble implementing things from the bottom up. So we can take their data, and what the platform can do is transform that data into a form where it can deliver behaviour change, where it can help expert groups to transform what they're doing, and non-expert groups to become a part of the solution, whether they're employees or customers. There are customers for that at the moment on a kind of consulting basis for quite a bespoke approach, and what we're preparing for now is a future of kind of utility customers. We can see there will be international application for this. So what Carbon Culture is doing is finding the common problems that all those customers have and building common solutions for them, so we can take away a really costly, risky process for them and replace it with something that ultimately will be a utility service for sustainability, embedding and delivery. So the tech platform allows lots of applications to drive off the data they already have and present the right data to the right people at the right time in order to get the outcomes and evidence them with data. going really fast. What happened so far? I won't spend too much time on this. There's a data side, which has enabled lots of savings, and there's a cultural side which has proven itself to be addictive, enjoyable, and actually changed behaviour in a way that's traditionally very complicated. Got 1 second left. These are our customers, mostly major employers and estates, also facilities managers. And next year we may raise. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Luke, and appreciate your keeping the time. Really appreciate it. Panelists, one question.
I was 10 seconds over. I apologise.
Anybody with a question?
Talk to us about your revenue model.
So the current revenue model isn't really for scale. We're kind of operating at low scale at the moment. In the future, which I imagine is the one you're asking about, is principally software as a service with a kind of initial setup fee, and then after that, it's software as a service, which is related to the number of users and also the impact.
Do you have anybody whom you would identify as a close competitor in your space?
In behaviour change and engagement, particularly no. So the two halves, there's a kind of data infrastructure layer, and yeah, there's a few competitors for that. But at the moment, the way those data are integrated isn't amenable to creating behaviour change. So cities at the moment that want to do that, they can aggregate their data, but not in a way that they can actually solve the whole problem, only in a way that they can solve the reporting and compliance problem.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Luke. Manoj Shinde, representing Orpo.
Yep.
2 minutes. Sorry, but that's it. Go for it.
Hi, my name is Manoj. I'm a founder of Orbo. We're the first AI research company that started in 2015 in India. We've been very blessed to have Mr. Vinod Damas, the father of Pentium, investing in us in the previous round. What are we talking about? Sort of just talked about the bandwidth and the data consumption, but the reality is 40% of the bandwidth in US is used by Netflix, and that's reflecting across the world, be it China, be it US, be it Japan, South Korea. And that increasing video consumption putting bandwidth at risk, right? I mean, we talked about Geo example just now. We just happened to meet Geo guys, and they said that, we're trying to ban the porn in India because we're not able to handle the bandwidth in India. So that is the state which is happening. Here, 10 minutes of, 10 minutes of any 1080p video takes about 277 MB worth of data. And that's why we're calling ourselves modern day Pied Piper. What is the problem that we're trying to solve? We're trying to solve the problem that is associated with the low resolution content, be it TV, be it e-commerce, be it surveillance, or be it MRIs and gaming streaming. But how it's been done, it's for 20 years we've seen content, we've seen bandwidth issue, content issue, we also seen device issues. Fast forward 20 years later, we have the content, we have the devices, but we still have a lack of bandwidth. But how are we solving this thing? We're bringing to the world a real-time super resolution that takes a low-resolution image or a video and converts it to 1080p or 4K in real time. That is going to solve the last-mile delivery problems for many of the video content providers, be it embedded videos, be it e-commerce. We're also disrupting a CDN market. We are executing AI first time in the world in the browser. And that is going to be significantly change the CDN market, be it telecom or the CDN companies itself. And then we tackle the problem with our 14 different IPs. One of the IP that was solving that motion to photon latency with VR, the nausea or the jutted feeling that you get with the VR headset, we're taking that away. And one of the last, which is what? The 5G video delivery. We're bringing to the world a most innovative 5G video delivery that's going to take the near cloud delivery ecosystem and do the last mile video content push to the users with the experience that they're looking for with a minimal input on the bandwidth. Our distribution models are simple. We're a enterprise SaaS model, but we also believe in distribution. We're working with some of the largest companies like Accenture, Cognizant. These people have come and approached us to do a joint go-to-market strategy. What is the achievement so far? We've kind of swept all the AI championship in the world, and very recently where Prem was a part of $1 Million Challenge as well, and that is something that we swept in Hyderabad. But Japan, China, India, or US, we kind of nailed it all. So thank you so much. This is Orbo for you guys.
Okay, one question only. Very well.
Thank you.
I hated stopping you. Anybody?
Yeah, just I guess the standard question. You seem to be solving a very major problem.
Yes.
I'm surprised that it looks like nobody else has tried it. Is anybody?
There are research that's going on. So one of the largest semiconductor company has evaluated us against the research that is going on in the world, and they've come back with the results that we've not only surpassed the objective KPIs, but we also surpassed the subjective KPIs. So current state of output that we have, it actually surpasses the 4K quality.
Okay, so the next question: are you raising any money?
We've just closing our pre-series A round.
But you haven't closed.
We haven't closed.
Let's
So
go.
come talk to us.
You're talking to wrong people.
Okay.
Thank you so much, guys.
This is fascinating.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Great.
Okay. Ashutosh Natraj, founder and CEO of Vidrona. Ashutosh, I will have to make a humble request to you to stick to 2 minutes. I believe the next session has to start.
Hi, I'm Dr. Ashutosh Natraj, and I'm the founder and CEO of Vidrona. And Vidrona is a company, basically it's a space tech-enabled company for precision predictive physical asset management. Our product is an AI-inspired web-based platform that provides the valuable insights for the customers in the form of actionable items. Our customers typically come from the energy utility sector and agri-tech as well. The company was founded in 2015 as Oxford University employee staff graduate entrepreneur scheme, and later incorporated by the European Space Agency. The story begins in 2015 when I was looking and analyzing my own expenses on the electricity bill, where I realized that lots of things have been done in B2C, but nothing was done in B2B. So everybody is saying that the cost of electricity is dropping, but eventually everybody's paying more. So to get this an idea, so we make use of our proprietary computer vision algorithms for precise fault identification and make use of machine learning using the various type of classifiers to make the process, reducing the time over it. And then making use of predictive analytics by AI, which is more on a supervised learning. And I'll make you understand how the problem is. The current conventional methods actually have the fact that there are high downtimes required. There are lots of human error. We eliminate all of these by actually utilizing our product. To understand the entire challenge, if you look at the utility sector, nearly 10% of the assets are poorly inspected or not inspected. And that attributes to 70% of downtime. And what does that mean? It actually costs £25 million worth of losses and penalties for a small, mid-sized utility company. And I'm just talking about a UK-based company, this figure, but that is actually valid for all across the globe. But that's the reason why it makes a quite an important task to show you where we are. Why is it interesting? Because we are looking at a predictive inspection market, which is globally to be 46.5 billion by 2022. And that, as you can see, is like by solar inspection, that contributes to 16 billion, and then predictive inspection contributes to 27 billion. And these are quite an interesting market. And I just want to say that, in India, we're already working with some of the major utilities such as Tata Power, Adani's, and so on. So the learnings which we are getting from the other part of the globe is also being disseminated all across India as well. So we're making it happen that. And to make that happen, we have a group of team members. So I met Ashish in Oxford while he was exiting his previous startup, while I was looking and finding someone who could actually help me to scale up. And then later on, 10 months later, Shailendra joined, who actually has an experience of 15 plus years. But I would like to highlight that on board we have now a major utility company who was our customer, now has joined our team as a board, and main CIO, Chief Innovation Officer. I can't unfortunately disclose his name right now because that's the process, but he now is opening up major markets, so scaling up. So that's why we're here. We're looking to raise £1.5 million worth of business. Thank you so much.
Great.
So what's your go-to-market strategy?
So we directly have a B2B market strategy. All the utility companies or infrastructure companies, that's the first thing. And how we do our business model is more like a revenue recurring model. So we have them a monthly subscription model, and then they could come and subscribe. And they are helping the entire model by using their own people who are doing in the maintenance part. They would be contributing to make the system more intelligent. So that's how we are currently making it.
Do you see disruption coming from low orbit satellites who are trying to do the same thing?
So the interesting thing is that, as I said, we make use of data which comes from satellites, helicopter, drones, and whatever. We are more like an analytical platform. We don't care about where the data comes from. It's all about how you're going to make use of that data, how you're going to make it more useful in a way that it can help you to increase the return on investment on your assets, increase the life of the asset, and at the same time reducing your OPEX cost. That is the key word of it. So, thank you.
Great.
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, we have a late entrant, but Lawrence, I have to say we don't have 2 minutes. So I'm just going to announce Lawrence is here from PaveGen. He is raising 5 million and strictly by the book, 1 minute.
PaveGen make floors that generate energy from your footsteps. Every time you walk on our floor, it captures your kinetic energy. We've installed it just outside there, the entrance. Every time you move on it, we're generating 5 watts of power. Now, we're all about how can you find a solution for urban environments to make cities smart. India has a huge smart city agenda. Only 5% is completed. We've got revenues of £3 million, and we're working with some of the world's biggest companies. I've just had today confirmation of 2 million investment from a $1 billion Indian conglomerate to take us to the market. So we're looking for Indian smart investors to add value of what we're doing. If you'd like to see the product, come over there. And if you've got any questions, maybe I've got some time. And just a final snapshot, these are the deals that one man in my team has closed. So we're a revenue generating company raising 5 million. Thank you very much.
So where Johnny Walker talks of keep walking, you can talk of converting that walking into energy. Wow.
Exactly, and if you saw there, Johnny Walker paid us £200,000 to launch the Keep Walking project across Europe. So we've had a successful track record working with big brands as well.
But do you generate power cheaper than other forms, or is this just a more eco-friendly source of power?
So solar energies has 60 years to develop to become very low cost. We're at an early stage of our journey, so our cost base compared to solar is we're very expensive. But we've got a plan to make our flooring the same price as normal flooring, so that we believe we can have a payback of under 10 years. And that's why we've done a deal with a partner in India, I can't talk about it yet, to make sure our production can be done here at an extremely low cost based on our strong intellectual property base that we've got already.
Can I ask a quick question?
Go take a walk, we'll have another meeting soon.
Why do you need 5 million?
So we're raising 5 million to allow us to grow in the Middle East, North America and India, day one, and also to reduce the cost of our production. It's expensive at the moment, it's done in the United Kingdom, we've proven it works, and the investment will allow us to reduce the cost and really scale this company.
Okay. Okay, so on that note, people who have questions, these guys are still around, catch hold of them, mob them, leave me. Thank you actually for Luke, Manoj, Ashutosh and Lawrence. I think very innovative lectures. And thank you Raman, Saurabh, Ajay and Prem. Thank you very much for your time and your insights.